Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Fallen London. Today we're going to be having a look at November's exceptional story, The Stripes of Wrath. But as always, before we begin a new exceptional story, I encourage you to play these yourself, support Failbetter, become an exceptional friend. Not only do you get access to these lovely stories, you get access to the House of Charms, which has some new things in it these days, and Lost and Found shop, more outfit slots, and a bigger deck of cards. And a second candle. Obviously, I kind of forgot the big, obvious reason you'd want to become an exceptional friend. But either way, without further ado, let's begin. Stripes of Wrath. 3 bandaged figures, or rather, 2.5, transverse the pavement towards a growler cab. Their movements are jerky and stiff. Tomb colonists are never agile characters, but this is a special case. Fresh bandages cover the figure held upright between the other two. The wrapping suggests large sections of his torso are missing, along with half an arm and some of the head. We've got 2 options. Ask what happened, not meddling if it's framed as polite concern, or if we had, being close to the tomb colonists, we could offer assistance. There are established techniques for this situation, and an extra hand helps. But I am not closest to the tomb colonists, so let's ask what happened. The tomb colonist on the right eyes you an impenetrable look with his good eye. "Attacked," he grunts beneath his bandages. "Mutilated with the intention of doing exactly this. He's off to the Grand Sanatorium before his time." The unfortunate victim heaves himself towards you, swinging one stiff shoulder around. His eyes are covered, half of his teeth move, but the sound that comes out alternates between a hiss and a gurgle. A child is showing ghoulish interest in the situation. A curious urchin has sidled up behind the awkward procession. With her forefingers, she parts the bandages where the figure's ribs should be. She wrinkles her nose and peers into what is surely a grotesque cavern of flesh. So I can either remove the urchin. Peeping beneath a fellow's bandages is frowned upon in polite circles. Or we can distract the tomb colonists. The anatomy lesson will be a useful experience for her. View from her background, make it to medical school. Let's remove the urchin. Stop. You can't just look beneath someone's bandages, it's rude. You drag the little blighter away. She offers only token resistance. The tomb colonists reach the growler and insert their fragile friend as if he were a folding stepladder. The urchin watches them drive away. "There were things inside him. Looked like dried fruit," she says. She glances up at you and frowns. The urchin stares at you. "I know you," he says. "We're in the same business." The same business? What business? "Detectivizing, solving crimes through the application of the brain." He taps her temple. "Allow me to present my credentials. The case of the missing muffins. The lizard of Lace Whisper Street. The mysterious weasel thief who definitely weren't Arnold even though the missing weasel showed up inside his hat. That were all me. I mean it. It were me that solved them, not me that done them." You regard this pint-sized sleuth for a moment. He points a finger at you. "I even detect what you're thinking. What does she know?" "Well, I know where the crime scene is for that poor fella. I'll show you, if you like." He scampers off, looking back to see if you follow. All right. The crime scene. The urchin detective leads you to a dismal alleyway behind Mahogany Hall. As you get closer, its grand facade is replaced by scratched brickwork and mouldering piles of fabric. The urchin brings up the rear as you advance towards the crime scene. A bored constable slouches on guard. He straightens up at your approach and raises a hand. "No access to the stage door today. Performers round front. The way he accents performers tells you he's not a theatre goer. I can either claim to represent the implacable detective, her reputation holds weight among the rank and file. I can bribe the constable. London's constables are famously impossible to bribe unless they are bored, grumpy, hungry, or thirsty. This fellow looks to score at least 3 out of 4. Or if we had special dispensation, we could use it. You were useful to the law before. You may be again. I don't know how you get that. Must be a storyline I haven't done yet. Well, let's claim to represent the implacable detective since she is my sponsor in the Dillman Club. The constable smiles beneath his mustache. I haven't seen her for a while. I do miss the old dear. If I were covering up nefarious deeds, she'd be the last one I'd want on my trail. Go on then, check it and report back. Give her all the best from the lads. The constable stands aside. Clean-up squad's due any minute. Best make it snappy. You pass by. Your footsteps echo off the alley walls. No need to ask where the deed took place. Dried blood coats the cobbles, with a roughly human-sized disturbance at the centre of the pool. The scene is undisturbed, apart from imprints of approximately 300 pairs of hobnailed boots on every conceivable inch of ground. Lovely. I'm going to assume that was the police. Let's examine the layout. The victim entered. The murderer entered and left. What else can you detect? It's a good location for a murder. The alley is a dead end, and the few windows that overlooked it have been long bricked up, presumably to escape the window tax. One gas lamp is out, and the resulting shadows would be enough to hide 2 assailants, maybe 3. 2 adjoining doorways have also been bricked up, likely after repeated break-ins. The one remaining portal is the stage door for Mahogany Hall, London's premier palace of variety. Don't bother knocking, the constable says. It's all chained up inside now. We don't want jugglers dropping balls in the evidence. Wasn't chained up at the time, of course. Okay, let's examine the blood pattern. The body has been removed, and you have seen the next day's version carried to a cab. But around 8 pints of evidence remain there on the cobbles. The cobbles are thick with sanguineous residue. You step back for an overview of the pattern. There are 2 shapes of bloodstain. One is thick, even, and forms a roughly human outline. That was likely post-mortem, draining from wounds and pooling beneath the body. But the other type is wild, extending in all directions like frantic brushstrokes. The spray reaches farther than you might expect. The inspector said that the wounds were... The constable consults his notebook. Inflicted by curved blades of about 3 inches, wielded with a brutal ferocity. Furthermore, he noted that a striking amount of tissue was torn away and removed from the scene, leaving large teeth marks on the remainder. No wonder the revived tomb colonist was struggling to stand upright. The murderer ate him, the urchin detective says. Wow. I wonder who the murderer is. It's a rare thing in London for somebody to get eaten, I suppose. Is it? It might not be. Normally it's a good stabbing, you know? You don't normally get our big chunks ripped out of people. Okay, well, let's look for elusive details. A regular police team has been through here and left its marks. But what have they missed? You begin with the cobbles against the wall. They slowly narrow your search pattern. After a few minutes, you find the clue you are looking for, wedged down between 2 cobbles. It is a bee. The creature is dead and partially coated with blood. Minute traces on the stone show that it was crawling away from the body before it succumbed. Casting around the area, you find 2 or 3 other bees. You retrieve tweezers and a small jar in your pocket, old habit, and lift a couple of samples. Close up, you can see one is marked with a tiny sigil. No, the sigil is an intrinsic part of its body. "Cool," the urchin detective says. "Got any more jars?" Well, let's depart the alleyway. It seems you, and any remaining evidence, are about to be removed. The temporary nature of death in Fifth City means murders merit a reduced amount of police attention, particularly when the victim lacks social standing. The crime scene will be cleared within 3 hours, and the usual hangers-on will be able to return to harass the stars of Mahogany Hall. You've left the most obvious clue until last. Bloody paw prints lead away from the carnage. A 4-legged pattern. Each consists of a triangular central pad and 4 adjoining ovals. Tiger tracks. One print of each 4 is a little irregular between the rightmost ovals. The prints become fainter toward the mouth of the alley, then disappear entirely. The urchin detective bends down and lifts something from the cobbles. A bee. She peers at it in the lamplight, then tucks it into her top pocket, and follows you back towards Spite. A tiger in London? How rare indeed. You're still far from the lights of Spite when the urchin detective grabs your sleeve. "I can hear something," she says. "It's been behind us since we left the hall." You stop to listen. There is a sudden, heavy silence, like that of a menace, pausing a relentless approach. So we have 3 options. We can walk faster. Traditionally, nightmares give up if you simply increase your velocity. Make a few quick turns, take advantage of the confusing terrain, or we can use our local knowledge. Who knows the outskirts of Spite better than... Wait, were those stairs there before? Let's walk faster. How far are you from the ragged but crowded markets of Spite? 10 minutes? 6 minutes? You step up the pace. The urchin follows as best she can, skittering on dirty cobbles. Occasionally she grabs on with both hands, lifts her feet, and lets you carry her for a few yards. Much more of that will ruin the lines of your outfit. You make steady progress until you sense the heavy presence is no longer behind you. You stop to catch your breath. Then you hear it. Heavy padding, deep breathing. It's ahead of you now. How fast can this thing move? Muted, weighty impacts echo from the walls. You listen closely and catch deep, unhurried breaths. Or are you imagining them? The urchin does not let go of your sleeve. "It's getting closer," she says. "I don't like this." You consider your options. Some people in this situation might regard the diminutive detective as a potential decoy, a distracting snack, but she can probably move faster than you. So I can't leave the child behind as a distraction. Okay, well, you know, the option was there. Let's use our local knowledge. You help the urchin detective over a wall, then vault it yourself. You snake through enclosed gardens, 1, 2, 3, then dart through an archway onto a rear path. Together, you hurry past several shabby dwellings. The last one has its curtains open, affording you a glimpse of a quite extraordinary gymnastic coupling. The urchin stops dead, eyebrows raised. You hurry her away. Back on another street, you still sense your pursuer nearby. You've taken a wrong turn. The high gate bars your way. It's too late to turn back. You're cornered. The urchin detective cowers behind you, fists knotted in your jacket. Well, there's nothing else for it. Let's face our pursuer. A shadow rises up the wall, the grim outline of a beast twice your size. There's nowhere left to run. Your stalker emerges from behind a building with slow, deliberate treads. The lamplight plays on burning eyes, glistening whiskers, and a shockingly modern fedora hat. Mighty muscles shift beneath a furry, striped midriff. The tiger approaches the two of you at a lazy pace, claws scratching the cobbles. "Good evening," the tiger says, his voice about 5 octaves lower than the urchin's. "Is this the murderer?" That is a fantastic hat. The tiger advances into handshake range. You hear a squeak from behind you. Perhaps your urchin friend. The tiger speaks. "You are investigators, I think. I am also an investigator. Some clients call me the Banded Sleuth." Well, let's make our introductions. Perhaps it will be harder for the tiger to eat the two of you if he knows your names. The Banded Sleuth swings his head to peer around at the urchin. "Calmed," he says. "I wish to speak to you about the Mahogany Hall slaying." "Was it you done it?" the urchin detective demands from her ineffective refuge behind your legs. The tiger laughs, a gentle rumble that seems to run from his hindquarters to his jaw. "Hardly. Devouring Londoners in an alley is rather gauche, don't you think?" "What's that mean, my lady?" hisses the urchin. "Does it mean it needs mustard or something?" This tiger does not appear to be actively hungry. Best not let your guard down, though. Let's ask about his clients. We're pretty sure this tiger is not a constable. "My client list is rather exclusive." The tiger gives a lazy flex. "Individuals come to me when they require discretion. If you want something handled quietly, engage a hunter, yes? Suffice to say, you would find most clients in slow cakes exceptionals, except 1 or 2 who have gone to great lengths to avoid the pages of that particular publication." Why is he involved? You might expect tigers to stay away from this particular case. The first time, the sleuth's composure breaks. He slips a newspaper from beneath his hat and slaps it on the cobbles. As you pick up the latest edition of the unexpurged London Gazette, he shows his teeth and gives a brief, low growl. "Tiger slayings shock city. Londoners are huddled inside in fear this evening at the news that a man was brutally slaughtered at a popular variety palace, Mahogany Hall. Tigers and humans have coexisted peacefully in London since the fall, with relatively few casualties. Does this represent the start of a savage new era? Not a great article, if you are a tiger whose business is discreetly solving crimes. Observe," the sleuth says, "that it reports exactly 1 attack, but the headline is plural. I'll be having a word with Huffman about that." Newspapers being dishonest? Who ever heard that one before? Looks like the London Gazette has mastered clickbait. A few 100 years too early. Right, let's go on. Discuss the crime scene. He can't have actually been there. The banded sleuth twists his whiskers. I set out for the hall the moment I heard what had happened, but the constables were already there in force, tripping over things and dropping chewing tobacco. I had to wait until most of them left before I could take a look. You express surprise that he was able to bypass the guard on the alley. The tiger gives you a withering look. There is no doubt in my mind that the assailant was a tiger. The strike pattern is quite clear. Also, I found this on the periphery. He passes you a small, curved item, sharp at one end and rough-edged at the other. He raises his own paw to make the comparison clear. You are holding a broken tiger claw. Useful to identify the perpetrator? He raises a squiggly eyebrow. I guess we shall ask him how he wants to proceed. He didn't stalk you without a good reason. Well, usually I would knock on a few doors and ask questions, relying on natural intimidation to extract the truth. But that isn't going to work with the general population frothing about tiger attacks. I want you to be my eyes among the people. His tail sweeps across the cobbles, and his own eyes flare. I will hang back and consult as you learn more. I imagine you will want some kind of reward. Well, that can be arranged, although the true reward is being associated with the banded sleuth. You agree? Good. Without waiting for an actual answer, the tiger turns and pads away. The urchin detective emerges from behind your legs and wipes her nose. I wasn't scared, he says. You can make further investigations around London. So we have two options. Ask the cabbies, or go to Mahogany Hall. Let's start with the cabbies. London's cabbies go almost everywhere and see almost everything. And they love to talk about it, regardless of whether you've asked. Let's ask about marauding tigers. Were there any obvious stripy killers in the area that night? Marauding? Like pirates? With those big triangle hats? You explain that the question refers to any tiger prowling the street. Nah. I've been at this game 20 years. You do see a tiger once in a while, but they always want to be seen. It's a big fella goes round the restaurants, thinks he's the bee's knees. I don't know why they put camouflage stripes on them. They stick out a mile. That's fair. Let's ask about transport. Do tigers often take cabs? Cabby rubs his chin. Well, it's a delicate business. You're usually right with the females, but the males can weigh as much as 4 or 5 people. The big cabs are engineered for that, but they expect the weight to be spread about. Forget a phantom or hansom. You need a growler at least. He leans in close. Problem is, when a tiger hails you and you know the carriage won't take his weight, you can take him and wreck your livelihood, or you can not take him and explain the weight problem to his face. Or you can drive right by and hope your horses are faster than a tiger. He leans back again. You see the dilemma? As for other ideas, if the tiger wasn't seen walking the streets and didn't take a cab, what's left? Cabby shrugs. Maybe live local. Anyway, nice talking. I've got to find 7 or 8 more fares before I can face the wife. With a flick of the reins, he rolls off. You consider the streets around the crime scene. Mahogany Hall sits amid cheap restaurants, unobtrusive drinking dens, and the occasional upstairs house of ill repute. It is not the kind of neighbourhood a tiger could navigate for long without being noticed. And possibly more compelling, it doesn't seem like the kind of neighbourhood a tiger would lower themselves to live in. Let's go check out Mahogany Hall. It's a place that values secrecy even more than the rest of London. Let's find the right contact. Accessing the Grand Old Music Hall is as simple as buying a ticket. Navigating its roster of wild, wonderful, and often demented performers is a different matter. Your urchin assistant has an idea. "Don't worry, milady," the urchin detective says and taps her nose. "I know this lot. You hang back so you don't spook nobody." Linger behind a marble pillar while she intercepts one of the stage urchins. He pulls away at first, but she grabs his lapel and whispers in his ear. There is a brief, intense negotiation, after which you see several weasels change hands. The stage urchin leaves, his jacket alive with moving bulges. "I got the contact," the urchin detective says. "Let's go." The current booker at Mahogany Hall, although not a clayman, has skin with a slight grantic hue. The urchin detective stares at his chiseled cheekbones. Well, let's ask who is missing. His nose is so thin, it is difficult to converse normally without marvelling at it. The man studies his ledger. "I deal with companies, not individual performers. Well, given the timing, I'd say he was one of Mazurka's crew. She should be in the dressing room right now." The urchin detective screws up her face as you leave. "Was he Shroud? That don't make no sense. I thought for sure he'd be with the glass." Madame Mazurka's room is deep in the bowels of Mahogany Hall. The door is open, although she reclines nonchalantly, draped in gauzy scarves and arcane symbols. Her eyes are uncommonly sharp. "I knew you would come," she says. "I can refresh my memory about the Shroud. They claim to talk to the dead, don't they? All you have to do is buy a ticket." Sure. You take a moment in the corridor outside the dress circle. Along the wall are dusty portraits of famous acts from the hall's past. In one, two little girls are tied together in a cabinet as spectral forms whirl around its exterior. In another, a pale gentleman gives the performer a wide-eyed look with a beatific vision of his deceased wife stands behind, a faintly glowing hand resting on his shoulder. There are some more confusing illustrations of floating ear trumpets and a man apparently sliding out an upstairs window whilst asleep. These are the feats demonstrated by the Shroud. Okay, why are the Shroud and glass in conflict? The urchin detective is concentrating so hard. It looks painful. "Ernie from the curtain squad told me this one night after too many rubbery swirls." Your inquisitive companion sits down and starts ticking off her fingers. "There are dogs and cats fighting. No, it's snakes and dogs. No, it's snakes and cats. And the Shroud are on the side of the cats, and the glass are on the side of the dogs. I mean snakes. And all this happens in dreams." She tails off for a moment with her mouth open. "But it's not like a proper battle. It's all mystery and doing sneaky things behind the scenes." She sucks her teeth, perhaps wishing for a rubbery swirl. "The strange thing is that the Shroud are on the side of the cats. But you wouldn't think a tiger would attack one of the Shroud. You'd expect a dog to do that. I mean a snake." Let's cross her palm with silver. Madame Mazurka stretches out a hand. "We must respect the traditions," she says. "Sure." Mazurka looks unimpressed by your donation, and for a moment you think she will extend her other palm. But she sighs and pockets the money. "You may ask your questions. I will answer truthfully. But be quick. A queue of the dead awaits me just beyond the veil." Her fingers probe the air as if the veil is a curtain between you. Okay. Let's ask for details about the missing man. He worked with Madame Mazurka, yes? Yes. This is him. He taps a faded image, clipped from a newspaper. The introverted apiarist is second from the left, mostly concealing behind a woman whose eyebrows are attempting to climb to the very top of her forehead. Part of the crew for 3 years. He waits for you to leave. And you do not. She rolls her eyes. An apiarist is somebody who works with bees, if I'm correct. So that would explain the bees at the crime scene. Of course, the focus of our work is communication with the hereafter, but it is necessary to create a mood to open the mind and the heart. We use lights, we use scents, like the church with their stained glass and incense, yes? He provided that. He was our atmosphere maker. Madame Mazurka taps the picture again. He had a small premises in Spite, but he cooked things. I visited once. Pointedly, she stops speaking and closes her mouth. Ah. So we can pay her again for the lab location. A simple solution, if you can afford it. Or I can extract the lab location using a different approach. She needs to understand the risk to her personally. I will pay her. I have a soft spot for these people. I don't know why. I think it's my inner performer. Let's pay. You give her the money. She writes down an address which you recognize as a tumbled down street, 5 minutes walk from the market at Spite. He picks up a deck of tarot cards, taps them on the table, and looks towards the door. Your companion begins a close examination of Mazurka's spirit cabinet. The woman rises and shoos the urchin away. Let's ask her why she seems unaffected. She worked with the victim for 3 years. I know tears. Those of us who converse with the departed on a daily basis feel differently about death. He stepped beyond, yes, and then he returned, as one does. He is now headed for the tomb colonies, and eventually he will take another form. And then we may talk to him once more. Her voice drops to a confidential level, but we probably won't, because in life he was not, to be honest, a great conversationalist. In the meantime, we have plenty of his powders, and I will find it a little easier to make payroll this month. So I feel fine. Thank you for asking. God damn it. I do believe that is everything, so we shall leave Mahogany Hall. You have what you came for, and a little more. The back door is still chained up. You ascend through the velvet darkness of the house and return to the foyer. Well, milady, your urchin acquaintance says, this is the toughest case I've ever had. Just as well I've got you to assist me at this time. Give her a look. She skips ahead, laughing. And I think that is a perfect place for me to end the first episode of The Stripes of Wrath. Thank you all very much for watching. Please subscribe if you want to see more Fallen London stories. Obviously there is a whole playlist of these, hundreds of videos at this point I think. So if you haven't seen those, please feel free to go back and watch them. It really does help keep the channel going. Thank you again to the members. It really does mean the world to me, and it is incredibly helpful. But as always, I'll see you next time.